It's okay to be lost. At a point in my life, I felt lost professionally. Personally, I wasn't sure where I was going and where I belonged. Like many people in their 20s, I was searching for myself. I tried different paths. I explored different careers. I kept looking for something that felt right, but nothing seemed to fit. Then one day, I had a realization. I spent so much time looking everywhere else for answers that completely ignored what was right in front of me. My father had already owned the business for many years, and I grew up around it. And I decided to become an optician, not because I knew exactly where it would lead me, and not because I had some grand master plan, but because for the first time, I saw a path that could eventually allow me to become a partner in a family business. Don't panic when you don't have all the answers. Keep moving. After I finished school and earned my optician's degree, I assumed I would go straight into the family business. But my father had other plans. Instead of hiring me, he told me to go find a job. And at that time, I didn't fully understand. And honestly, I was a little offended. Looking back, it was the greatest gift he ever gave me. He wanted me to gain the experience. He wanted me to learn the business from ground up. He wanted me to understand what it meant to be an employee before I became the owner. So I went out and I found a job at an optical store. And honestly, I was incredibly fortunate because those years gave me foundation that no classroom ever could. After all these years, I understand exactly why my father sent me away instead of hiring me immediately. Because if I had walked straight into the family business, I would have inherited a position. Instead, I earned my experience. And that experience became one of the most valuable assets I've carried with me throughout my whole entire life and my career. Nobody's coming to save you. At some point, every person has to become the hero in their own story. The day I stopped waiting for someone else to fix things was the day my life changed. As I gained experience and confidence, for the first time, my father and I were able to speak the same language. Not the language of father and daughter, but the language of business, language of optics, language of customers, prescription, lenses, and how to run a company. And slowly he began to recognize me not just as his daughter, but as a professional. And that was a very big moment for me because anyone who has ever worked in a family business knows that earning respect is often harder than getting the job itself. My father and my uncle, who was his business partner, had a tradition. Once a year, they would take a vacation together. And every year when they left, they would simply just shut down the business. But this particular year, instead of closing the store, they decided that I was ready to hold down the fort. Looking back, I don't think they realized how significant that decision was. For me, it was everything. For the first time, I was entrusted with something they had spent years building. That week, as usual, employees came to work, customers came through the door, problems came up, questions needed answers. And for the first time, I was the one responsible for it all. And I still remember the feeling. Part excitement, fear, pride, because deep down, I knew I wasn't just covering a week while they were away. This was a test of whether I can handle the responsibility, whether I could lead, whether one day I might be capable of carrying the business forward. And without realizing it at that time, that one week would become the beginning of a much bigger journey. Growth is always painful. No wonder they call it the growing pains. What I thought would be the start of a bond and growth together with my father at Boga Optical turned into something I never expected. My father was diagnosed with cancer, and from that moment on, he never returned to the office again. One day, the person who had built the business, led the business, and carried the business for years was suddenly gone. Nothing could have ever prepared me for that. There was no transition plan, there was no handbook, no roadmap. There was only a business that needed to continue operating and a family that was facing one of the most difficult moments of our lives. Looking back now, I realized that life has a way of choosing moments for you. I thought I had time to learn. I thought I had time to grow into the role. I thought I had years ahead of me before I would have to carry this responsibility. But life had other plans. In a single moment, I was no longer preparing for the future. The future had arrived. And from that day forward, my life would never be the same. I had to let go of employees, old systems, old habits, beliefs, sometimes even an old version of myself. Growth and comfort cannot live in the same place. While my father was battling cancer, there were many fires burning at the same time. My uncle wasn't just losing a business partner, he was losing an identical brother, a person he had spent his entire life with. My mother, who had never really played a role in a business because that was always my father's job, suddenly found herself in a position she never expected to be in. But when life changes overnight, people step into roles they never imagined. And as often happens, when uncertainty enters the picture, everyone has opinions. And everyone had one. Everyone had an idea. Everyone had their own agenda. Or perhaps everyone believed that they knew what was best. But somewhere in the middle of all that noise, something became very clear to me. I was going to fight for this. Not because of the money, not because of the business itself, but because deep down inside I knew this is what was meant for me. This is what I meant to do. For the first time in my life, I wasn't lost anymore. I wasn't questioning my direction. I wasn't searching for who I was. I knew this business was my future. I knew that this is where I belong. I knew that if I didn't step forward, I would regret this for the rest of my life. Looking back now, I don't think my father consciously planned every step of this journey. I think he did hope that one day Polina will run this company, but I don't think he ever actually believed in it. He always wanted me to become strong, independent, capable, and to become a leader. Everything he taught me, every lesson, every challenge, every time he made me earn something instead of just giving it to me, he prepared me for this moment. But when that moment arrived, I had to make a decision. I wasn't going to let his life work disappear. I was going to carry it forward, no matter how difficult it became. When you find something meaningful in your life, no matter how uncomfortable it may seem, no matter how scary, no matter how insane, if you know in your hearts of hearts that it's worth fighting for, you must never give up. You must believe in yourself. Most important, you need to believe in the cause. So I fought. I fought for the business. I fought for my place in it. And most importantly, I fought to prove to myself and to everyone around me that I was capable. But wanting something and being ready for it are two different things. The reality is that I still had so much to learn. I had to learn how to operate a business, how to make decisions, how to work finances, how to manage employees, how to solve problems, how to carry responsibility that I never had to carry before. And perhaps the biggest adjustment of all was learning how to become a partner to my uncle. My father had always been the leader of the company. He was the head of the business, the person everyone looked to. When he was suddenly gone, both my uncle and I were forced into new roles neither one of us ever planned for. I was no longer simply a daughter trying to learn a business. I was becoming a business partner, and I wasn't his daughter. I was his niece. That dynamic was very different. It took time. It took patience. It took difficult conversations, disagreements. It took learning how to trust each other. I was still young. I was still very inexperienced. At home, I was raising a young family. At work, I was trying to grow into a responsibility I had never expected to have so soon. Looking back, I can honestly say that there were probably times when I wasn't the ideal partner to him. And there were probably times when he wasn't the ideal mentor for me. But the truth is, neither one of us had been prepared for what happened. He was grieving, he was adapting, he was trying to survive, and so was I. We were both learning in real time. We were both trying to figure out how to move forward without the person who had always been leading the way. But over time, something started to happen. We started to find common grounds. We started understanding each other's strength. We started learning how to work together. And while it wasn't always easy, those years taught me one of the greatest lessons of my life. Leadership isn't something you're handed. Leadership is something you grow into. A difficult conversation, a mistake, a challenge, one lesson at a time. And that's exactly what I did. Every challenge is preparing you for the next level. Every staircase has a step. All you have to do is take one step at a time. From that moment on, we began to build. The business we inherited was a good business. It had loyal customers, a strong reputation, years of trust within the community. But it was also a very traditional optical shop. We had routine eye exams once a week, limited technology, low insurance reimbursements, very basic systems. Many things were done simply because that's just how they've always been done. The staff we had been there for years, and they were loyal, but they were very comfortable. And sometimes comfort is both a blessing and a curse, because while loyalty is valuable, comfort can quietly become the enemy of growth. With my uncle's trust and support, we started making changes. We began investing in new equipment, introduced more advanced technology, expanded clinical services. We started transforming a traditional optical shop into a modern medical optometry practice. But progress felt slow, painfully slow. Sometimes it felt like we were taking one step forward and two steps back. And over time, I began to realize that the challenge wasn't the business itself. The challenge was the vision. My uncle and I simply saw future differently. He is a very kind person. He wanted everyone to feel comfortable. Conflict wasn't something he enjoyed. Confrontation wasn't something he sought. And that was his nature. And honestly, it's one of the reasons people love him. But I'm different. I wanted growth, expansion. I wanted modernization. I wanted systems. I wanted accountability. And I wanted to move faster. I wanted to build something bigger than what existed. And neither one of us was wrong. We were simply built differently. The challenge was that I often felt like I was driving with one foot on the gas pedal and one foot on the brake. Every change required a conversation. Every improvement required convincing. Every new idea required patience. And after a while, I started feeling something I never expected to feel: defeat. Not because I didn't care, but because caring so much and seeing so much potential while unable to move forward is exhausting. There were moments when I thought, maybe this is just how it is. Maybe this is as far as the business will go. Maybe I should just stop fighting so hard. I mean, as long as the business paid the bills, as long as I could support my family, maybe that was enough. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. Because once you've seen what something can become, it's impossible to unsee. And I could see the future of this business. I could see the growth. When my uncle walked away, I became the sole owner of the company. And for the first time, there was nobody left to share the responsibility with. Nobody left to blame. Nobody left to convince. Nobody left to ask permission. Everything was finally mine. For years, I thought ownership meant freedom. What I learned was that ownership meant responsibility. Every decision, mistake, success, failure, it all stops with you. And that's when I truly understood what people meant when they say it's lonely at the top. Not because you're above anyone, but because there's nobody left to carry the weight except for you. You would think being on your own is easy, but actually you must be so grounded and together with yourself and true to yourself to be able to withstand the test of being alone, because no one will ever feel what you feel. The next few years I spent cleaning up broken systems, cleaning up bad habits, toxic relationships, cleaning up old ways of thinking, years of neglect, complacency of this is how it was always done. And anyone who has ever inherited a business business knows that sometimes the hardest part isn't the building something new. It's undoing what no longer works. I had to rebuild the culture, team, customer expectations. I had to create boundaries that had never existed before. Boundaries with employees, boundaries with customers, with myself. And while all of this was happening, the office itself was literally falling apart. The floors were old, the walls were tired, the space no longer reflected where I wanted the business to go. In many years, the physical office had become a reflection of what I felt inside. A structure that has been patched and repaired for years, but was desperately overdue for a complete rebuild. And there I was, standing in the middle of it all, trying to move forward, trying to grow, trying to create something better, but feeling like I hit a wall where there seemed to be nowhere else to go. I remember asking myself a simple question. What do you do when you're standing face to face with a wall? Most people turn around. Some people stop. Some people accept that this is as far as they will ever go. I decided to break through it, literally. I made the decision to gut renovate the entire office. We tore everything down. The walls, the floors, the ceiling, everything. For months, it was chaos, dust, construction, disruption, uncertainty. People thought I was crazy. I thought I was crazy. And maybe I was, but I knew something they didn't. I wasn't renovating the office. I was creating a future, because every level of growth requires a new version of you. And every new version of you eventually requires a new environment. The old office belonged to the old company, to the old systems, old habits, old limitations, and an old mindset. If I wanted a different future, I couldn't keep operating inside the past. And looking back now, the renovation wasn't just about creating beautiful office space. It was a declaration that the future would be different from the past. And sometimes that's what leadership really is. Having the courage to tear down what no longer serves you so you can build what comes next. And today, I'm still building, still developing new ideas, still pushing myself to learn new skills, looking for ways to improve, chasing the next level. The difference is that today, I finally know who I am. I found my place. I found my purpose, a belonging for years I was searching for a career, a direction, confidence, searching for myself. What I didn't realize was that everything I was searching for was waiting for me on the other side of responsibility, on the other side of hardship, on the other side of loss, on the other side of every challenge I wanted to run away from. Today, I'm grateful and I'm proud and I'm excited. And if I'm being honest, I'm still impatient, because after all these years, I finally feel like I am breaking through. I finally feel like I'm becoming the woman I was always meant to be. A businesswoman, a leader, a professional, a builder, everything that my father always hoped I would become. Maybe even more than he could ever imagine. If there's one thing I wish, is that he could be here today to see it, to walk through the office, to see what we've built, to see how far we've come, to see the woman his daughter has become. And deep down, I believe he does. I believe he sees it. I believe he knows. I believe he's proud, just as I believe my uncle is proud. But perhaps the greatest lesson of this entire journey is that for the first time in my life, I'm proud of myself. Not because of the office, not because of the business, not because of the success, but because I didn't quit. And there were many reasons to quit, many opportunities to walk away, many moments when it would have been easier to surrender. But I didn't. And through every challenge, every loss, every obstacle, I discovered something about myself. I discovered how strong I really am. I discovered that resilience is a skill, that leadership is earned, and that growth is uncomfortable. I discovered that faith can carry you through things that strength alone never could. I know this journey isn't over. In many ways, it's just the beginning. And there will be more challenges, more failures, more lessons, more victories. and more mountains to climb. But one thing I know for certain is this: no matter what comes next, I will never give up, because this business is more than just a company. It's a legacy. It's a responsibility. It's a dream that started long before me. And now it's my turn to carry it forward. And one day, when someone asks me what I built, I hope the answer won't simply be a successful business. I hope the answer will be that I honored the people who came before me, that I made them proud, and that I had the courage to become everything I was capable of becoming. Never compare your chapter 1 with someone's chapter 20, because behind every chapter, there's a story, there's a struggle that someone had to go through to get where they are.